Today I'm going to show you 13 cheap and easy ways to organize your shed. Oh yeah! From a simple tote storage to a built-in workbench, yard tool storage galore, and of course lots of shelving. I've got everything covered for you, so let's jump right into it. I built the shed last fall and I immediately filled it up with a bunch of tools and things, as well as some industrial shelving, which I thought would be perfect, but it's really not. So these shelves are about 24 inches deep, and it's pretty good for some of the larger items that we have here, but you can see we don't have a lot of those. What we really have more of is a lot of smaller stuff. Now, in between the big stuff and the small things, I also wanted to just store yard tools and things that stood upright in this corner, which I thought was a great idea. But this is what happened. I had everything there, then I had to pull out the ladder, everything fell over, and this is just a big fat mess. So we definitely need some great storage for yard tools. This grid system in here, it's not great for cans or anything, so everything has fallen over, and it's just kind of a hodgepodge of nastiness. So I want to get these industrial shelves out of here, and I think we can make better use of them elsewhere and make some custom storage for everything else we have. So here's a tip for you when you are organizing your shed, and you probably have a lot of stuff in there, is go through everything and take out anything that you're not using anymore, that you don't need in the shed. Because there's no sense in organizing things that you're really not using, or that you need to throw away. So I've done that. Now I'm gonna get these shelves out of here, get everything off of them, and then we can start fresh and start building out some storage solutions. Ooh, okay, maybe I don't need this in here. Now that I have everything cleared out, we're gonna start with the internet's favorite storage, which is these 27-gallon totes. And these things are all over the internet. You see the huge grids of like 50 different bins and they're all rolling and whatever. We're not gonna do all that. I just have 5 of these bad boys. But the great thing is that this build will be modular, so you could use this for 5 or expand it out and you could use it in your garage as well. So all it's gonna be is a simple frame where we can easily slide these in and out. Now, earlier on the property, I tore down the butchering room that was in the old shop, and I have a lot of leftover lumber still. I'm gonna be using that for as much as I can in there. So storage for your shed is a great way to use leftover lumber, save you some money. Now for assembly, this storage bin rack could not be easier. Basically, I'm going to have 2 frames and then connect those frames with runners. So I've got the boards for my frames here. This will fit 5 of the bins high. Then went ahead and cut the top and bottom pieces as well as the runners. And this was all out of that scrap material. So a lot of this stuff is pretty nasty, so don't judge me when you see mud and maybe some bird poo on the wood there. So all I have to do at this point is measure out exactly where I want the underside of the lip of the bin to rest, because the bins are gonna rest on top of these runners. Then I'll just transfer those marks across all 4 of the vertical pieces here. Then we can just build the frames and screw everything together, and it's gonna go super fast. If you do wanna build your own storage rack and even make it bigger, I'll have a set of free plans available for you that you can just follow along with, make it super simple for you, and you can build this just as easy as I'm about to. I'm gonna use the speed square here to make sure that everything is nice and square. As square as you can get with old nasty lumber, of course. And if your wood's a little warped like mine is, don't worry about it. Once we connect everything together and anchor it down, it'll be fine. Ow! That probably could have been way worse than it was. Caught it nicely across my back instead of my skull. I'll tell you what, when you set a board up against the wall, maybe don't hit it with the other board that you're about to assemble. And before attaching the second screw and before attaching everything else, I'm gonna go to the top and attach one up there. And then that way it won't get locked in at a weird angle, and hopefully everything should line up. One at the bottom, one at the top, then fill everything else in between. I'm gonna flip it over and repeat the same thing on the other side. I'm starting to get a lot of splitting on this one. I don't know why I didn't get any on the other side, but I am using drywall screws because I had them left over from the video I did on drywall screws, and why not to use them? So if you're getting split wood, you probably want to go ahead and do some pre-drilling, and that'll solve the problem. push this in place and fill it up with some totes. So if I did my math correctly, and I hope I did, then they should just slide right in. Oh yes. Ooh, that is perfect. So 5 totes worth of storage with just a few 2x4s and some 2x2s. Again, if you want plans for this, head down to the link below in the description. You can check them out. You can expand it as much as you want. This is a great start. There's a lot more to go. The one thing that a lot of chefs had storage for is ladders, and this is no different. And yes, I do have a coat on now because a cold front just came in, and welcome to spring in Tennessee. So we have the storage bins, and I don't think having them in the middle of the wall is a great idea, but what we can do is use them up against the wall to make room for a ladder like this. So I know you can store ladders up high in the rafters, but this thing probably weighs a good 40 pounds. So I think what we're gonna do is make a spot for it next to the bins. So this ladder is pretty wide, so this will actually fit really nicely right here. And to keep it from falling over, I'm just gonna move the storage bin rack right on top of it. Now, to keep everything nice and secure, I am going to attach the storage bin with some screws into the studs. Now, before you attach the rack to the wall, you just wanna make sure that it is plumb and level because this thing is not super sturdy. So this looks pretty good. I'm just gonna attach it with a couple screws up top into the studs, and then I'll drive a few screws down through the base into the floor. So this is a great option for ladders, but also for anything long and tall, maybe surfboards, stand-up paddle boards, potentially even a kayak or something like that if it's not too long. Now, if you have something smaller like this ladder here, these guys are nice and light. So we could definitely hang these up high or just hang these somewhere in general. And I think right on the side of the storage bin rack could be a great option. I probably won't put this here, but here's how you could do it. All we really need is something for the ladder to hang on. You could even just use a screw, but I'm gonna go ahead and use a little offcut of this 2x2 just to give it a little more meat. So these little scraps are perfect just to put the ladder straight on there, and it's nice and tucked away. Now, one thing I really want in this shed, I think is great for storage, is a place to work where I can basically put something down here, whether it's a lawnmower or anything else, and just be able to do a little bit of work. I do have this little portable sawhorse that actually has a top that comes out. And this is great, but I want to go ahead and build one in here so I can use this at other places around the property. The top is going to be super basic, and to keep it simple, I'm going to make it 48 inches wide. So I've got a front and a back here, and then I'm just going to connect those with some stretchers, and these are 17 inches, which will make us a 20-inch deep top. So I'm going to space these equally along here. I'll lay out the marks, drill them, put it together, and then we can attach the top. And if your boards are a little crooked as well, using some clamps is really going to help to square things up and make it easier. All right, I want the tabletop to be 35 inches high. I like that. It's a nice height for me. You can adjust yours however you want to. But what I'm going to do is actually put in a little ledger board just to make attaching it and making it nice and level a little bit easier. And I'm going to put this 3.5 inches below where I want my top to be. So it's a little bit easier to just go ahead and level one board, then we can reference the top on top of there, and it makes it nice and easy. So now I can throw my top up here, and I am going to use the tote bin rack as a leg, and then I'll put some legs on the front after I get it attached. All right. For the top, I had some leftover OSB, and this is just 1/2 inch, but it's fine for a little desktop out here. So I'm just gonna use this. I cut this down to size over on my Craig ACS. Because we're going up against the studs, there's gonna be a gap back here, and I don't want things rolling off and going back there. So I cut some little blocking pieces, and I'm just gonna put these in between here and just hammer them in and attach them with some screws from the inside. And that way, it'll be a nice solid surface. I'll just screw this down with a few screws, and we'll be good to go. This is not going to win any beauty contest, but it's a perfect spot to change a chainsaw blade or throw your lawnmower up there, sharpen your blade, something like that. And underneath, we now have some space for my air sprayer, which will fit perfectly under there. So especially for tall and heavy items, you can just slide them right on in there. But one thing I think we can do better is have some storage space up here on the walls too, and we can take advantage of the space in between the studs. So this is going to be the easiest and fastest way to add storage to your shed. You're just going to put a 2x4 in between the stud bays there, and it makes a nice little shelf. And I'm just going to go ahead and measure it, and I'm going to cut a little long because you don't want to cut short because then it's just going to flop around and be hard to put in. So I'm going to take a few measurements here, and then we can cut them up and bring them over and screw them in place. All right, let's see how we did. Ooh. Miraculously, that fits perfectly the first time. I can just attach it with a couple screws from each side. Now, when you're attaching these other ones, you want to stagger them so that way you can get the drill in there. So if you put them at the same height, then you can't screw in from the side. So just stagger them up or down. You know, it's like a nice little feng shui aesthetic or something. I'm going to cut this one down because this one's a little too tight though. All right, let's see how she fits now. What? Just kidding. I cut this one. So these are just great little shelves. You can have your lubricants down here. You can have some spray paint, some carb cleaner in case you're doing any little small motor work, and maybe some painkillers for when your projects go south. All right, now this next one is just a modification of the shelf. And instead of using a full 2x4, you can use a 2x2 or just rip down a 2x4. And so if we put that in here, what you can do is set it flush with the front face here. And then as you have it in, it leaves a space in the back. So now if you have anything like C-clamps or anything that has a little hook on the end, you can hook that right in. For me, I'm gonna use it to put my clamps on here. The setup's exactly the same. I'm just gonna pop a screw into each side here. The hardest place for storage in any room really is the corners, and that's the same for the shed, because if you put something in there and you want to get to it, then you have to kind of make space on either wall. So instead, I think the corner is great for standing up tall items. And this little hack is going to be super fast and easy. So I've got these two kind of taller pieces here that won't fit good on a shelf, and they're both a little bit heavy. But if I put this guy up here in the corner standing up, it's okay. And then this is a canopy tent, which again is a great thing to have stored away in a shed. Now, these guys could probably stand up straight, but I don't trust them. So we're gonna use these to help. And these are bungee cords. So I lied earlier when I said that that was the easiest. This will be by far the easiest because all we're gonna do is put a screw into the studs here, and then we can just wrap the bungee cord around them to keep them tight so they won't fall over. And these actually have these little holes in here that I could actually make it even tighter if I wanted to. So that's kind of cool. So depending upon what kind of bungee cord you have, you can get it tighter or looser or just find the right size. With these lower items right here, another great thing for corners is air hoses and extension cords. And so I want to hang this up just right there. It'll fit perfectly. And I'm just going to do that with another 2x2, and I'm going to screw it to the underside of the top plate up there. So it's a perfect spot for hose reels, and I could probably fit a couple other extension cords up there as well. Now coming around to the back of the shed, this is where the yard tools are gonna go. What I'm trying to do is keep the area in the middle here nice and open, because later on I do want to build a ramp and hopefully be parking a mower in here or something larger. And we're gonna try a couple different ways to store some of these yard tools. Now everybody's got a different set of yard tools, so it's kind of like Tetris, just trying to figure out how to fit what you have in there. Some of the hardest things are like these huge rakes. So you've got a couple different ways that you can hang your tools. You can hang them by the handle. Unfortunately for most of these D handles, they are too small for a 2x4 to fit over. That would be really nice. But what will work is a 2x2. So we could do the same thing that we did for the extension cords, hang these up here and just kind of stack as many as we can on top. Or of course we could flip them around and hang them with the tool head upwards. And that's actually the way that I like to do it. And so what we can do is take advantage of these studs and put some 2x4s on each side, because the handles are typically less than 1.5 inches, which is the size of a 2x4. Again, stacking as many as we want to, depending upon how far out you go. I usually like to do only about 2 or 3, because then it's kind of a pain when you're trying to go through them. So I just used my handy new workbench, and I pre-drilled some holes in here, and now we can just put these right up here. Some people like to angle these up, and that is kind of a good idea. Actually, I'm gonna do that. I did cut a little angle on the back of these, a little 5-degree bevel, and that will help make sure that it's pointed up and that the tools won't want to kind of shimmy off if for whatever reason, if you're in an earthquake zone or something. Now you can just choose where you want it to go. I like to have the head up here as high as possible so I can use some space underneath there. Just mock that up there and I'll put a screw in it. All right, now I can just put the other one up here. Oops. Make sure the angle's going the right way. A little straight edge to align them, and then attach this one too. There we go. All right, now I can load up a couple of my spade shovels up here. This guy, that's perfect. I've got this big transfer shovel, and I think this would be perfect to hang by the D handle here. So I'm gonna actually get in between these studs because the shovel actually fits right in between them. So we want to use the best advantage of our space here. Now there's no blocking here, so I can't really attach the 2x2 straight to the wall. So what I'm gonna do instead is use this 2x4 that I cut to size and put this flat up against the wall here. Now I'll go ahead and put my shovel in here to see where it lands. And then I can position this so the 2x2 will be in the right place. There we go. And I'll secure the 2x2 in place, which I also did cut the bevel on here at 5 degrees as well. And a little tip, you can take the offcut and put that on the underside of your 2x2, and then that way it won't try to suck it down flush when you screw it down. There we go, this will slide right on. All right, perfect. I got my shovels taken care of now. We are losing light extremely fast here, so we're gonna have to pick the rest of this up tomorrow. So I started off this morning with another around the stud bracket for my long shovels as well as the hard rake. But now this leaves a nice open spot here in between there, and you really wanna just try to fill all the bays you can. And I think this will be perfect for mounting the chainsaw. And we're gonna use a combination of two of the things we've already done for that. So chainsaws are kind of weird. They don't really have a great way to hang them, but I think it would actually fit nicely just right in here. But obviously having something to hang it on is gonna be key. So instead, I think I wanna make a shelf on the bottom and then have a bracket up top that'll keep it from tipping over. And we can use the stud shelf and then the 2x2 up top to do that. I'm just gonna get these out of the way while we work. And this should fit in here just like that. I'm just gonna put the chainsaw on here and see where that's gonna wanna land. I think that should work. So the combo with the little shelf here and then the 2x2 to hold the bar is perfect. Now that sits in there nice, and it's not just gonna fall off, and you can easily get it out. So I think that's pretty cool. This is awesome because we're making use of every little square inch that we can. I used another 2x2 on the wall here, which is perfect for hanging on to the little shroud of my weed eater. But one thing I have is this little pole attachment that is for a little chainsaw for pruning. So I'd like to store this right here, but it's gonna be kind of tippy and I'd rather have it just kind of sitting on something. So I can cut a little notch in this shelf and that way have it nice and recessed, sitting in place so it's not gonna fall over and it's not gonna get in the way of the weed eater. So I'm just gonna position this where I think I might want it, mark where that lines up. Now all I need to do is see how far back I want to put this, right about here. So now all I have to do is I'll use a spade bit and I'll drill out that hole. Then I can use my jigsaw to extend that hole into a notch. I'll knock off the corners just to make it a little bit easier to put in and out, and then we can attach it to the wall and see how it fits. With a few quick cuts, we have a little notch out. Let's get it mounted up. I'm gonna put the weed eater in here just for positioning. Make sure we get it in the right spot. All right, here we go. This one is gonna work out perfect, I think. And now have the chainsaw attachment right in there. So using a combination of all these different things, the notches, you can basically hang anything that you want to. I really love this system. I'm gonna hang a few more things up, then we're gonna start on some shelving on the other side. And sometimes you don't even have to get fancy. All you need is a good old-fashioned screw. So coming over to this sidewall, I'm gonna use most of this for storage, and I'm thinking 3 different shelves. And some of them can be really light duty, like the top. I'm only gonna have light stuff up there, like empty jug containers, things like that. But the lower ones, we're probably gonna have some heavy things on them. So I wanna test the sturdiness of these shelves and just a 2x4 coming off. So I'm gonna attach one up here, we'll see how much it can hold. All right, we're not gonna go super scientific, but I'm gonna start with just 2 screws. I'm thinking I wanna put 4 screws in there to really hold it. And maybe we won't need bracing if we have 4 screws, but let's start with 2. So with just 2 screws, there's actually more movement to this than I thought there would be, which is kind of interesting, but I can definitely kind of wiggle it around. All right, I'm gonna put 2 more screws in there. Let's see how much that shores it up. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, that is way more solid. I'm gonna try to hang that anvil on here and see how much it deflects, if anything. And you know what? I'm just gonna hang on it. We're just gonna hang on it and see what happens. All geared up, I'm probably 170-ish, let's call it. So I'm gonna slowly put my weight on here. I'm gonna try to pull myself up actually. But, oh yeah. All right, well, it held me, but I could definitely hear it creaking and moving under the weight. I think if I hung there for a little bit, it would probably fail. But I will tell you what, without any bracing, that is pretty stout. That's gonna hold 50 pounds very easily. So you don't need all this extra bracing just for some shelves like this. And this is what we're gonna definitely use up top. We'll think about adding some more bracing down below though. Now when you think about where to place your shelves, just kind of use the same thing that we did over the yard tools. Take your biggest and bulkiest thing that you wanna store there, and then you can just kind of put it up there and see how much room you actually need. About like that. So I'm thinking we'll come up to right about here on the top of the shelves. All right, so if I measure from the bottom of the top plate there, mark 11.5 inches, and I can lay that measurement out on the other studs, and I'll have a location to put all of the framing pieces. Instead of just relying on these marks, especially with 2x4s with the rounded corners and such, I'm gonna actually put a nail up and run a string and put a nail on the other side as well. And then with that, I can just push the 2x4s up to the underside until it just touches the string, and then I'll know everything is level. So for the top row, I'm only gonna go with 3 screws instead of 4, because like I said, I'm just gonna be storing a bunch of light stuff up there, basically empty jugs and canisters. But if you wanna go for it. 5, 6, whatever. And these are 15.5 inches so that I can have a 12-inch shelf on the top. I'm just gonna butt it up against the sheathing, then take it up until I just kiss the underside of that string. As long as we're flush against this panel, then I know that they're parallel. But it doesn't hurt to check. Yep, that looks good. If we just toss the OSB up here and go against the studs, we're gonna have that space back behind where things can fall out. So all I'm gonna do is put this up here and mark the studs, and then I'm just gonna notch right around these. And you don't have to do it this way. You could also put blocking in here like we did on the workbench, but this is gonna be quick and easy because I've got the jigsaw already. All right, now these should just slot right around the 2x4s. And I'm using offcuts and scraps. Using a full piece would be great, but you can split it up easily as well. Perfect. All right, now I'm just gonna hit these with a few screws and then get it loaded up. I went ahead and whipped up another one right here. So through the power of editing, it just happened like that. But I wanna show you a way if you want to really have a stout shelf and also not have to have a huge brace on it. There's a cool bracket that we can make that is just gonna add a ton of strength. And we're gonna have that here so I can really load up some heavy stuff right here about waist high. So when I'm pulling it off, it's nice and easy. I don't have to bend over to the floor and it'll be able to hold a lot of weight. Now, instead of just using a 2x4 and sistering it up to the side, we're gonna include an offcut of the OSB, and we're basically going to sandwich this. We'll have one piece on this side and another on the other side, and we're gonna be making some gussets out of it. This is a 10-inch wide board. I'm just gonna set my square right to the edge. I could take that and line it up and cut it on my track saw, or you could just cut it by hand on the circular saw. Then I can just mirror this cut right here. Got our 2 gussets. Now to assemble these, I'm gonna clamp this guy down here so it won't move. Then I'm gonna flush up this stand-in for the stud, and we're not gonna be drilling into this at all. I'm gonna attach 5 screws in here to really give this a lot of strength. So then we can just flip it over, and you can put a little scrap under the other side so it doesn't want to rock on you. All right, I went ahead and whipped up all 5 of these. And now we can start putting them up there. I'm using the same string line idea. And I'm gonna start with this guy down here. And this just slots right on there. That's so cool because it'll just kind of stand up on its own. But once we get all these screws in here, we can attach 5, 6, 8 screws, and it's gonna really transfer a lot of weight all the way to the stud. All right, I went with 6 screws on each side, and with that shear load of all the screws, this thing should be able to carry as much as the wood will do without breaking. So I'm just gonna put my body weight on it just like I did the last time and try to pull myself up and see if it takes. Oh yeah. No creaking except for my bones. Now that is a stout bracket. These are super sturdy shelves, which are perfect for my backstock of nails and even storing this heavy device. Maybe I'll install on the workbench one day. I'm leaving this open for now because I have a little Gorilla Cart utility dump thing that I'm gonna be putting right here, but this is great. I have room to expand later, and this looks so much better than it did before. Now, if you're looking to organize your garage, I did make some garage shelving I think you're gonna like. I got a video queued up for you right there. I'm Brad. Until next time, get out there and build something awesome.